Anchors up, sails at full. Welcome to the Sloopcast. How are you doing today, Kyle?
Doing right, Jared. Doing all right. How are you doing?
I'm not going to complain. Gangland, it's pretty par for the course, if we're being honest. Kyle, it's been a crazy couple days in Buckeye Nation.
Speaking of Kyle.
Yeah, speaking of Kyle. Kyle, I have to say, you've very much been Team Kyle in the Discord over the past couple days. More so than I was expecting. I feel like you have a very Kyle-based alliance happening between you and Mr. McCord. I feel like maybe you just got something to get off your chest. I feel like maybe you just have some thoughts on Kyle McCord, and I'm just... Listen, it's not too often that I just sort of hand the show over to you and tell you to run, but I think I'm going to hand the show over to you and tell you to run.
I mean, did we expect Kyle McCord to be the next Justin Fields?
Yes.
The next CJ Stroud?
Yes.
The next Dwayne Haskins?
Yes. He was more highly ranked than two of the people you mentioned in the recruiting rankings.
I personally didn't think so. That was just such a high expectation from him.
He was ranked higher in the recruiting rankings than both Haskins and Stroud.
And especially since we knew what this offensive line
that's a big issue.
And so I think there's so much blame that's being pointed directly at McCord, and I don't think it's completely fair.
I agree.
Was he consistent? No, I'm not going to. I can't stand here and defend McCord about being at the elite level that we expect an Ohio State quarterback to be. But as a first year starter, it wasn't terrible. Like he didn't have a bad season at all. He had what? I think he was ranked 8th in the country in QBR. Like that's great. That's great.
It is,
all things considered.
But it's Ohio State. Mm-hmm. And it's Ryan Day's Ohio State.
Yeah. But
to
go back. It's
I'm just saying the offense is specifically designed to pump the numbers of the quarterback. That's my point. The Ryan Day offense is specifically designed to pump quarterback numbers. And let's not forget we can say the offensive line was bad, and it was. But also the wide receivers are amazing.
Yeah, I don't care if you had Dwayne Haskins or Carlon Jones back there. I'm just picking on those two because they're not the most mobile quarterbacks. I don't care if you have either of them in the backfield there. They weren't going to be able to make the throws that they've been able to do in their career because, they had time to throw the ball. And we've seen, like, when he had time to throw the ball, more often than not, he made throws. He made good throws.
I agree. But
I just think the amount of blame that's going around for the failure that happened throughout the season on McCord is too much.
Only lost one game by 6 points. I'm just before we call the season a failure. I know. I get it. Missed the playoffs. Didn't beat Michigan. Didn't win the Big Ten.
That's 3 big check marks right there.
No. I get it, but I think I don't know. I don't like living on a binary of success versus failure like that. But yeah, 6 points away from being number 1 in the college football playoff. Yeah.
Yep.
Lost a spot for each point, as it turns out.
Yeah. All right. So getting back on track here. So obviously Kyle McCord, the big headline here, departing, heading on over to the transfer portal here. A lot of other names here. I will slowly try to read these off here. Probably the next big name here, Julian Fleming. I thought that was a little surprising. I was
I'm
hoping to
not.
see him back. I was hoping to see him back one more year.
I wanted him back.
You would have a veteran wide receiver coming back to help try to mold, and it's always good having an older and more veteran player in your position to really help mold and help develop the younger players too. And I thought Fleming could have been that guy for the young wide receiver crew for next year, but wish him the best moving forward to wherever he goes.
Fleming's hoping to go have a Jameis Williams type season somewhere. I don't see that happening. I hope I'm wrong. I like Julian Fleming. I hope he has a great season somewhere. But yeah, I don't know. It's my whole thing with Julian Fleming is I would love to have him back. He almost left last year.
That's true too. Yeah.
My understanding is that a sum of money happened to have him not leave. I don't know if that's true or not. But
so other players here on the offensive line or the offensive side, Evan Pryor, I know is a fan favorite here at the Sloopcast here. Evan Pryor transferring out. I can't really blame him. We've seen and we know the type of player he can be, the explosiveness he has. But
injuries,
yeah,
man.
Injuries. Yeah, injuries is And then the other two off of the offensive line, Vic Cutler and Jacob James heading to the portal as well.
Yeah. Vic Cutler transferred in last year. From all reports, he didn't ever really, well, I don't want to say ever really, but he didn't grasp the offense early on, and then he just didn't catch up after that. I expect, and I'm not going to name names. I'm not going to put anyone in the portal before they go into the portal. We don't do that here, but have we lost anyone who doesn't have a suitable replacement? We've not lost anyone who I would 100% tell you would have started next year. There are certainly players who could have started next year. Kyle McCord being one of them, but the fact of the matter is that Kyle McCord was not going to be, and depending upon which reports you believe, I wasn't there, I don't know, but depending upon which reports you believe, McCord wanted to be told that he was going to be the starter next year. Or maybe someone around McCord, again, depending upon which one of these stories are closest to the truth. And the coaching staff, Ryan Day, essentially said, we're not guaranteeing you a starting spot next year. And Kyle McCord made a decision that he had to make. And that sucks. I would like to have had Kyle McCord back. I wanted Kyle McCord back, but Kyle McCord wants to start next year, and he's going to go somewhere where they're going to let him start next year. And that was not a guarantee at Ohio State. That's just the fact of the matter. Julian Fleming would have started, but that doesn't necessarily mean he would have gotten starting level snaps. Cutler, James, Pryor, I don't think any of them got competition snaps this year. On the defensive side, I would have liked to have kept Reed Carrico, but I don't think he was going to start. He wasn't going to start. Amari Abor was not going to start. I don't think Amari Abor was going to start. I feel like, so, I mean, I don't want to do the whole who's leaving, who's going thing, right? I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that on this episode anyway, right? But it is my opinion that JT is leaving. I think that's probably pretty safe to say. And I think Jack Sawyer's is a little bit more of a question mark. So, are you hearing rumblings of someone who will hurt us? I don't expect any big names to enter the transfer portal from this point. If that's what you're asking. I think if someone else leaves to the transfer portal at this point during this window, it'll be because Ohio State brought someone else in and they will then in turn leave, which is a thing we'll talk about later. Amari Abor. So, I mean, I think even if Jack Sawyer were to leave, Amari Abor is still like your third defensive end. I think that Kenyatta Jackson passed him, which I think is why he's leaving. Kenyatta Jackson is a true freshman. Amari Abor is not. Kenyatta Jackson got a lot of competitive snaps this year. That's what happens when a young guy passes an older guy, and the older guy is talented enough to go play somewhere else. They're going to go play somewhere else, and that's Amari Abor. Like, he is talented enough to go play somewhere else, so he's going to go do that.
Yeah, Amari Abor, Reed, you mentioned Ryan Turner, Jair Brown, pair of defensive backs that's in the portal, as well as a pair of safeties, Cameron Martinez and Kai Stokes, as well as the kicker Parker Lewis.
Yeah,
that currently rounds out the players who are currently in the transfer portal.
Yeah, I don't expect like any like impactful names. If an impactful name leaves from the portal now, during this window, during the December portal window, it'll be because Ohio State brought someone else in and someone will go, well, there's my replacement, and then they'll hop into the portal. You know what I mean? That's the only way I see any other like big names leaving. Honestly, we'll miss Stokes, Martinez the most. Stokes and Jair Brown, I think, aren't going to greatly impact next year's team. But I would have wanted them to stay. And that's part of the problem, is that for the sake of the defense, you kind of looked at those guys as like really impactful depth guys, and then 2025 guys who were going to get serious time in 2025, but they didn't want to wait that long. So they're talented enough to play somewhere else. They're going to go play somewhere else. I wouldn't. Yeah. Jihad will play next year. The defensive tackle, whose name is floating me from Ole Miss, will play next year. Vic Cutler's gone. Tywin Malone. Thank you, Gangland. They'll play next year. But yeah, I mean, it's too many defensive backs. Like, it's 4 defensive backs. That sucks. That sucks a lot. But part of the reason why that is because Ohio State has a very incredible freshman class of defensive backs coming in behind them. So it does make me feel a bit better. The recruiting class, who we will talk about later in this episode, we are also talking about recruiting a little bit later in this episode, I think is incredibly talented in depth and has, it actually does not have a ton of depth. But I think that the guys who they have and who I think they will finish with are incredibly talented, if not depth. But yeah, that's who we're looking at going out.
So for you Buckeye fans that's looking at this, you see a lot of departures. I know there's a lot of concerns like, oh, there are so many players leaving. What about the brotherhood and blah 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 and all this? It's fine. It's fine. I mean, Alabama last year had 20 in the transfer portal. It's fine. It's fine. Don't sweat it out.
Yeah, and people worry about scholarship counts, and then don't you worry. We'll be talking about Seaton later. Don't you worry. But then when the players choose to leave, everyone loses their minds. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If people want all the players to stay right up until you have to get under 85, then they start getting their pen out. Jared, did you post the screenshot that said we should probably aim for 90 from now on? I don't know if I posted a screenshot of that, but that was something Tony said in his Tony Girdman, the GOAT. Tony Girdman said in his things I think, things I know, things I'm sorry, I forget the exact title, but yeah, it's one of my favorite things Tony always does. But basically the idea that he was putting forth is like back in the day of like Jim Tressel, you'd go into like the spring camp with like 83 guys on scholarship so that you had one or two left over to give some walk-ons. And Tony was just sort of asking out loud, you know, what is that number now? And then he went on to just say, I suspect it's more like 90 now, because you just know guys are going to leave. That's just how modern college football works. So it just, like I said, it's something to keep in mind. All right. Ohio State, as Kyle was talking about before, and I'm not saying Kyle McCord was perfect by any means. I think he's a above average quarterback. But the biggest failure for Ohio State this year is what Kyle and I feared it would be, and we talked about during the entire offseason, was the offensive line.
It all starts with that offensive line. Don't care how elite of a running back, elite of wide receivers, quarterback you have. You don't have an offensive line, you don't have an offense.
So
that's got to get fixed right now.
Literally wrote in the notes right here as the headline for this section: the OLine 2024 make or break for Justin Fry.
Yeah.
Hinsman to the portal. We don't put guys into the portal on their behalf. We never, ever do that. I will say this. You know what I was saying before about like, well, the only way I see like a guy leaving is if they bring in the guy who might be their replacement. And Ohio State will be pursuing Zeke Correll, a Notre Dame center. But you know, you what if he comes in? Well, there is a guard spot open and one of those two guys could be bumped to guard, right? Totally plausible. Ohio State will pursue portal to improve the offensive line. Day and Fry said plainly several times during the course of this year that they didn't like even trust their backups. Like their five guys were their five guys. And that's unacceptable, especially considering the five guys, quite frankly, underperformed. You know, you had no competition, you had no depth. Now I'm going to go ahead and make a bold prediction here. It's not that bold. Despite the fact that only Matt Jones is out of eligibility and will be leaving, he's not going to be the only change to the starting lineup. Not at all. You could see. I think it's realistic to say you might have like one guy playing in the same spot that they were playing in last year. I think is if I was going to make this into an actual bold prediction, I would say like one potential if Donovan's coming back. I'd be shocked if Donovan Jackson left. He quite frankly didn't have a good year. He didn't put anything on tape that's gonna impress the NFL scouts, quite frankly. Yeah, and it's hard when you're not getting a ton of help around you. He's the best lineman in a bad room. Maybe. So I think like the question for like a guy like Donovan Jackson becomes like, was he being elevated by the guys around him last year, or did not having any support around him this year cause him to struggle? And I'm not going to pretend like I know the answer to that because I don't. So yeah, I would say like either Jackson or Hinsman might still be in the same spot they were last year, and that might be it. We will talk about Jordan Seaton and the likelihood, yes or no, that he'll be joining the team a little bit later in the show. But if you don't know, Ohio State hosted this past weekend a young man by the name of Jordan Seaton, who is, by the opinion of some, the best offensive lineman in the 2024 recruiting class. And again, without getting into like a ton of details, I'll say the possibility is very, very real. It's not me saying it's going to happen. I'm just saying that there is a very good possibility. And I will say that Jordan Seaton, Stuart, you got to slow down for me, buddy. I can only talk about one guy at a time. Jordan Seaton is that guy. I think he is good enough. Wilfong did not say that. I read the Wilfong article.
Yeah, he did not.
He did not say that. He has not placed a crystal ball. I read the article. He did not say that. Learn to read. Are we going after the Notre Dame dude? I just talked about Zeke Correll, the Notre Dame dude. I was late. Jordan Seaton, I think, is a very real possibility for Ohio State. And I'll also say this. I think it's going to be crazy. I don't know. Like, I think there's a lot of teams that want this guy, mostly Ohio State and Tennessee. And I think that like there's a legitimate like bidding war that could take place to get Jordan Seaton on campus. And I'll say that Jordan Seaton could start immediately for Ohio State. Will he? Maybe. Could he? Yes. He would have this year. I'll tell you that. I think Jordan Seaton is starting. If you could like rewind, I think he would have started on last year's offensive line. And now it might be a Paris Jackson Jr. situation where he starts at guard as a freshman and then bumps out to tackle. Paris Jack. What'd I say? Did I misspeak? Oh, okay. Paris Johnson Jr. Excuse me. A lot of names. I think it could be a situation like that. I think it just sort of depends upon who else you bring in. A typical Sloopcast, yes. So we look at the transfer portal. Kyle, who's out there in the transfer portal that Ohio State could be bringing in?
Lots of names.
But who specifically is Ohio State targeting at this point that we know of?
I think some names to keep an eye out for. Carter Smith, the tackle out in Indiana, I think is a name to keep an eye out. We've mentioned this name and part of a recruiting episodes years ago. Zeke Correll from Notre Dame. That's another name that I think Ohio State would look after. And let's go back to Indiana and the guard of Matthew Bedford as well too.
It should be noted that both Smith and Bedford, again, left Indiana. Indiana has been devastated by the transfer portal. They did a whole coaching swap, and especially on the offensive side of the ball, their team's in the portal at this point. Both Carter Smith and Matthew Bedford are originally Ohio kids. These are Ohio high school athletes.
I'll throw a fourth name out here, Jared.
I mean, I'm sticking to names I know Ohio State's looking at, but if you want to throw a name out there, throw a name out there.
I'll throw this here because he had Ohio State as one of his top 7 in when he made his decision.
7, huh?
No. LT Overton.
I mean, that'd be a nice pickup.
That'd be a great pickup. The really good offensive lineman out of Texas A&M. Him and his brother, both transferring out of A&M.
That's how it works at Texas A&M. You go there for 1 year, you get your bag, and then you leave. Any Walter Nolan smoke? As far as Ohio State goes, no. Like I'm sure they're trying, but I'm sure every team in the country is trying.
Yeah.
That's my assessment on that situation. Like Walter Nolan can go play football anywhere in the country he wants. That's how that works if you're Walter Nolan. So like I said, I'm sure they're trying, but I have no faith. I have no knowledge or faith on anything happening for Ohio State specifically in that situation. You'll get locked out of a promised apartment in Miami. Yeah, well, yeah. So I mean, those are, I would say, 3 for sure names. When I say for sure, I mean, like, I think Ohio State is pursuing them. That does not necessarily means that they want to come to Ohio State, or that after doing some evaluation that Ohio State will choose that they want them. There's an evaluation process in both directions there. I think Carter Smith would be a great addition to Ohio State, and I would say is a likely-ish addition to Ohio State. I think like I said, he's an Ohio kid, grew up in Ohio, wanted to play for Ohio State. Ohio State apparently screwed up their eval on him, which is why we changed offensive line coaches, because he is pretty good and he's pretty young. He could play for up to 3 years for Ohio State. Zeke Correll, I think is I think he's a great player. He's immediate plug and play. I don't have a good feel as far as Ohio State's chances there. And Matthew Bedford, I think is he's a guy who they'll need to do some eval on and decide if he has a, Ohio State level future or not. Anything else on the offensive line front, Kyle?
No. I want to clarify. I meant that LT was a defensive line, not offensive line. I apologize for that. Okay. I think the biggest question now, because it's the big topic right now, it's It's the quarterback. Is Ryan Day happy with who he has for next year? He has
just one more quick on the offensive line, Kyle, before we walk away from it. I just want to say I expect 1 to 2 guys if they get Seaton. If they don't get Seaton, it could be 3, but I still say 1 to, I would say 2. I'll just say 2. I'll say I expect 2 offensive linemen. But again, whether or not Seaton decides to come to Ohio State will affect how many offensive linemen they bring in. All right, Kyle, quarterback. Sorry about that.
So is Ryan Day happy with the 3 he has right now? Brown, Keansholz, and Noland. Is he happy with those 3, or is he going to go look for another 1-year quarterback for next year? And I think there's quite a few. I think there's quite a few names out there that Ohio State would be interested in. I think the name Cameron Ward, the quarterback out of Washington State, is the hot name right now. Riley Leonard, the quarterback from Duke, is another that's been thrown around, as well as Will Howard, the quarterback out of Kansas State. I think are probably the 3 quarterbacks that I think Ohio State would pick from if they were to come to Ohio State.
Yeah, and probably in that order. There's a lot of smoke around Cameron Ward in Ohio State right now. I would say it's very far from a done deal. What about the McCord kid? Heard he was top 10. I don't know what top 10 means. He wasn't top 10 overall, and he was much higher than top 10 quarterback. He was like a top 5 quarterback. In the QBR, my bad. Yeah, I'll say this. The stats are not evaluation. Stats are not evaluation. Don't be snippy. That was your guy. Yeah, Stuart. Oh, how the turns have tabled. Not mine. Oh, I got screenshots. Don't make me post the screenshots, Stuart. That was 100% your guy. He knows it too. Yeah. And all these guys are rentals. I'll say that. These guys would come in and play for a year. Which I think is like a lot of, people are talking, they see other big names out there in the quarterback portal, and Ohio State's straight up not going to go get a young guy. They're not going to do that. They're not going to scare off Kleinholtz, and they're not going to scare off Nolan. They're not going to do that. So you bring in like a 1-year quarterback who is going to compete for the job. Let me be very clear about something. They will compete for the job. Notre Dame brought in a veteran quarterback to compete for the job, and then they ended up going with the young guy instead. And the older guy went back to Notre Dame and is going to be playing lacrosse now. That's how that went for him. They'll bring in a guy, and that guy will not be guaranteed a starting spot. He will compete with Devin Brown and Lincoln Kleinholtz for the job. And no, I don't think it'll be Aaron Nolan. But that's how I see the quarterback situation. Kleinholtz. I know I throw an unnecessary L in there. I know I do that. Keenholtz. Germans and their names. Keenholtz. I know a guy who has a German name and it's just totally mispronounced.
Yep.
Right, Kyle?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Anybody else we're looking at Ohio State's looking at here, or any other position that we should be keeping an eye out for?
Just generally just take a look at the defense. Lose a lot of guys in the transfer portal, losing a lot of guys to the draft. Like there's going to be a lot of missing guys from the defense. So they will be seeking some depth in the transfer portal. I would say mostly, I would say mostly seeking depth in the transfer portal. I would say maybe the one exception to that is if they can get like an impactful defensive tackle. I expect Tyleek to leave. We don't know about Hall. We don't know about Sawyer. But KVA could easily flip. I don't think so. I maybe. I'm not saying no. But I don't have him in my mock, which I will reveal the mock later. Jalen, Zach says, yeah, Jalen, I think, is gone. And Tyleek, I think, is gone. JT and Tyleek, I think, are gone. I don't know about Hall. I don't know about Sawyer. Hall, I'm like 50-50 on. Sawyer, I think, is coming back, but I don't know. I don't expect Burke to come back, but these are all guesses for the record. I don't know anything. I expect most, unless you get like an impactful defensive tackle to like replace Tyleek. I don't necessarily expect Ohio State to bring in starters for the defense. I do expect them to bring in like someone to replace Kai Stokes, someone to replace Reed Carrico, who, like I said at the beginning of the show, I didn't expect to start anyway. Year of Curry. Yeah. Hey, did you know Kyle McCord legit had a public Discord server? He only sent like 8 messages in it. Well, I can tell you, I honestly did not know that. So yeah, one guy who they've already talked to, Ty Hamilton. Does Ty Hamilton still has a year, right? I'm so bad at tracking eligibility now.
Yeah, he has
because of 2020.
1 year left.
He does have a year left. Yeah, I think Ty Hamilton's an incredibly solid player. I don't think he's a disruptive player. And that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't think they're going to go get. I think you bring in a defensive tackle if that defensive tackle is going to be like an impactful player. Yeah, I keep trying to talk about the Mid Tennessee State guy, but y'all keep distracting me. Marley Cook is his name. He will visit. He will visit. I think he's already been offered a scholarship at Ohio State. Who is the guy from the Ivy League? There's a guy from Harvard. I think people are kind of sending him to Rutgers already, though. I don't know a ton. I don't have a ton of insight there. Again, supposed to be legit. I don't know. I think Ohio State we're pursuing Marley Cook very quickly. I'll say that. Like, I feel like they targeted in on him as their guy. For whatever reason, I don't know, but they definitely like they seem to just go straight after Marley Cook. They apparently did some eval and like what they saw there. But yeah, like I said, like, they'll pick up a defensive back, they'll pick up a linebacker in the portal, but I don't expect any of those guys to be like big money, high impact guys. That's my. I think it's mostly going to get some depth in the portal as far as the defense is concerned. Thor Griffith. That sounds like a guy who went to Harvard. I'm just going to say that. All right, Kyle. Anything else transfer portal wise?
Still young. I mean, it's still, so there's still a lot of time here, but yeah, I don't really, wouldn't surprise me if there was another name or two from Ohio State that may put their name into the transfer portal, but I don't expect another
Listen,
large bunch to come in.
I'm just saying if Ohio State does get in let's just say Ohio State brings in Carter Smith, and let's say that Ohio State brings in Jordan Seaton. Those are two impactful offensive linemen who are probably going to start one way or another next year. Right? So you add those two guys in, then you have, I can't do names tonight. Yeah, I'm just saying, like, Cheeks. Yes, thank you, Cheeks. I think Montgomery is the name I was searching for. I think Montgomery moving into his second year is probably going to work his way into the starting lineup. So I'm just saying, between Montgomery aging into the offensive line, adding Carter Smith, potentially adding Jordan Seaton in this scenario, right? Okay, you have one offensive lineman leaving, and here are 3 new starters. Do the math. Guys will jump into the portal. In that scenario, which is a somewhat likely scenario, guys are going to jump into the portal. Starting with, I'm not naming names. I don't put guys into the portal for them. And it might be some of the starters. It might be depth guys. I think there's a lot of depth guys who have not panned out. Again, and screenshots of your of my lie. You mean of your lie? All right. Let's jump into recruiting. Ohio State lost Justin Scott somewhat recently. That sucks.
Yep.
There's no other way of saying it. That sucks. His commitment always kind of felt like a surprise. Always kind of felt like an out of nowhere sort of surprise. And then his flip kind of felt like a out of nowhere sort of surprise. Did we lose him or did Miami buy him? I mean, yes, it's both. It's both. Miami and Texas A&M have a lot of money that they throw around, and guys will go there for a year, then they'll leave. We've seen it happen the past couple years. They buy a recruiting class, but it doesn't buy them wins. Don't want him. He'll be in the portal soon enough. I mean, I still want him. I'm not prideful like that. If he's like, hey, everyone, I got my bag in Miami for a year and I'm ready to come to Ohio State now, I'd be like, come on in, buddy. I don't care. There's a lot of talk, and this talk has been around for months. Rule 9. Exactly, Austin. Rule 9. Collect talent, worry about everything else later. As far where was I? Oh yeah, Jeremiah Smith. I know the buzz is out there. I know everyone's worried about it. I know we've been, oh my God, is Jeremiah Smith come? We've been having this conversation for months. And I know, like, in the wake of the Jeremiah Smith, of the Justin Scott flip, that just sort of heightens everyone's, what happens if Florida State or Miami shows up with a bag? He's a highly talented skill guy from Miami, or not from Miami, from Florida. What happens when I still have him in the class. That's what I'm telling you. I'm not telling you 100% that he's staying. That he's going to stay in this class, because I don't know 100%. I don't know that he knows 100%. I am telling you I'm keeping him in my mock class. That's what I'm telling you. And that's not out of me wanting that to be true. That's me honestly believing it. He's visiting FSU this week. Yes, he is. And they will offer him a bag. An absolute giant bank bag with a green dollar sign written on the side of it. And you hope that he is still Ohio State's wide receiver after that. I think he will be. Do I know he will be? No. I think he will be. You just gotta, like, you want me to put a number to it? I say like 80%. There's an 80% chance, in my opinion, that's just my opinion and nothing else, that he remains in the Ohio State recruiting class. Does that leave a 20% left over? Hey, you're good at math. It does. It's all right. He either stays in the class or he doesn't. I don't know what to tell you guys.
Yeah.
That's it on Flip Watch. Really important upcoming week. We're going to release this on the 7th. We've been talking a lot about Jordan Seaton. Jordan Seaton's committing on the day this comes out. If you're listening to this the day after it comes out, or if you're listening to this later in the day from when this comes out, you might already know if Jordan Seaton's coming to Ohio State or not. Although given the bidding war that's taking place, I wouldn't necessarily be sure that the place he chooses on the 7th is where he ends up on National Signing Day, because there's that much money apparently flying around. I know it's old school thinking, but I want players who want to play here. I want players who want to play here too. But if they go spend a year in Miami first to get a large bank bag full of money, then go. You can't judge. If you don't know someone's life, you can't judge their financial decisions. He might want to play here, but he's just going to go there for a year or two to collect money. Doesn't mean he doesn't want to play here. If you were, depending upon the financial situation you come from, it just might not even be a realistic choice for you. Like, you just have to, missing out on Ohio State development. Yeah, but like, you could also blow your ACL out. And if you have a chance to get life-changing money tomorrow, you get life-changing money tomorrow. Again, especially depending upon the background that a player may or may not be coming from. All right. We're running low on time, and I need to get this mock class out before we do that. Important dates: 7th, Jordan Seaton will be committing. This weekend, 3 very important visitors coming to Columbus. Defensive tackle Carlon Jones, a defensive tackle who recently decommitted from Nebraska. Good opportunity there for Ohio State to finish out their, or to replace Justin Scott. Safety Coy Perich, and am I mispronouncing that? Almost certainly. He is a late rising safety. Like, he kind of just, is it Parrish? Is it pronounced? It's not spelled Parrish. I'll tell you, it's not spelled Parrish. It might be pronounced Parrish. It's not spelled Parrish. Not in the traditional sense anyway. Again, he's a guy, Minnesota killed their eval on this guy. He totally late rising, up the recruiting boards guy. Would be a huge get for Ohio State. Would be Ohio State had a bunch of safeties that they were looking at one point, and KJ Bolden, Woodyard, guys who didn't pan out. This Perich. All right, y'all are giving me different. Y'all are giving me different pronunciations in the spelling. What, or in the chat? What am I supposed to do? Point is, huge pickup for Ohio State. Like, it's not like KJ Bolden great, but it's almost that good. And then a guy they've been pursuing for a long time, defensive end Ernest Willor will also be visiting this weekend. I think you can lock him down. I think you can finish that one off too. I think all three of these guys are, there's not an H anywhere in that name. I promise. There's not, y'all are just screwing with me at this point. I think all three of these guys could end up in the recruiting class. I feel very good about that. And to finish out the mock class, I'm not going to read out all the names to you for the guys who are already in the class. You can look that up yourself. I'm just going to tell you who I'm adding to the class. These are the players I am adding to the recruiting class. And again, I'm not subtracting anyone. I'm not taking Jeremiah Smith out. I'm not taking anyone out of the class. So here are the guys I'm adding. I'm adding Chance Robinson, a wide receiver who's currently committed to Miami. I think decent chance there for Ohio State. I do have Jordan Seaton in the class. Am I saying it's absolutely going to happen? No. Am I wish casting a bit? Maybe. But I think Ohio State has as good a chance as anybody else. I think it's like 40% Ohio State, 40% Tennessee, 20% the field. It might be like 45, 45, 10, maybe. Anyway, that's just me throwing numbers out there. Like, it's pretty even with Tennessee, but don't count out Bama, don't count out Oregon. There's other guys in play. Both teams are reaching deep into the bag for this one. I'm telling you that there's a bidding war happening. Carlon Jones, I'm adding to this recruiting class. I already talked about Carlon Jones. I am adding, along with Willor, I'm adding Amaris Williams, who is currently committed to Florida, and Parrish, the safety from who's currently committed to Minnesota, who we've already talked about. So those are the guys I'm adding to the class. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 additional players to the class. Once again, Parrish, Willor, Williams, Jones, Seaton, and Robinson. That was actually 6. All right. That's our final. No, not final. We'll do another one before the final. That's our official early signing day mock class. KVA, I'm not projecting KVA in. I am not projecting him in at this time, unfortunately. I think Ohio State, I would love for them to get a third linebacker. But Kurlick said it's a chance. I agree. I think it's a chance. I'm not saying absolutely not going to happen. I'm saying the chances aren't high enough for me to put him in my mock class at this time. That's where I'm sitting. All right, Kyle, I'm done talking. I'm tired. I want to, Christmas season is upon us. Everyone check out merch.thesloopcast.com for a bunch of, podcast merch that is in the realm of kind of Ohio State stuff, but, isn't, legally speaking. Legally speaking, it's not. Before the lawyers get sent after our merch shop again. Try and toe the line a bit. Get it before Ohio State takes it. That's the official motto of the Sloopcast merch store. Get it before Ohio State takes it. And then if you don't want podcast merch, you can go to 7071. That's 7071.thesloopcast.com, where we just have like a bunch of Ohio based apparel. That isn't necessarily, it's not podcast merch. It's just Ohio based apparel. But it's a different avenue for you to support the podcast. Buy a t-shirt, but like, you don't want to wear podcast merch, which I get. I understand. So those are two ways to support the podcast. You can also support us on Patreon, patreon.thesloopcast.com. And if you want to advertise on the podcast, sloopcast@gmail.com. Kyle, do you have anything in Kyle's Corner?
Love the shirt you're wearing, Jared.
Thanks. I was going to turn the lights yellow and I forgot. I was going to do yellow lights and I forgot.
Columbus Crew.
MLS
Cup. MLS Cup this weekend.
Yeah, is a big one. What the hell, Austin?
Austin.
What are you doing?
Austin.
Just out there being in Austin. It's always doing. No, I'm sorry. You're fired. You're fired, Austin. Sorry.
Let's see, what kind of he's a
we'll have to invent a role for him. We'll have to invent a role for him. Crew about to bring happiness to Ohio. You're damn right.
Damn right. Gonna bring that third championship home here.
I have to say, I'm a bit surprised. I wasn't expecting this. But they surged.
Especially with some of the key departures.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they went on a run.
They got peaking hot, at the right time.
Hot at the perfect time here. So, yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, especially in professional sports where the margins are so slim between teams, like, it's a thing I like to remind NFL people, like, no one in the NFL sucks. Everyone in the NFL is great. I don't know if I can say that about MLS soccer, if I'm being honest, but in professional sports, the differences between teams are so slim that, like, just being healthy at the right time or catching a hot streak at the right time is sometimes just what it takes to win a championship, for better or worse. All right, Kyle, do you have anything else in Kyle's Corner, or is it time to move on?
No, I think that's the big thing here. Go watch The Crew. I believe you can watch them actually on TV for a change, and not just on Apple TV.
What a horrible mistake that was. Why would you reduce the visibility of your sport like that? Anyway, yeah, so that's it. That's the end of the show. Tonight's ending music brought to you by the Cloud Nothings. They're a band out of Cleveland.
Yeah, it's on Fox. On Fox at 4:00.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, the idea was floated in the Discord server. Well, I probably shouldn't advertise that. I'll just say Social Screen, because if I just say Social Screen, if you know, you know. If you know, you know. But that idea has been floated, and Kyle, how do you feel?
If I can make it, I'll do it.
I was hoping for a little bit more of a. It's like you have a sub 1-year-old in the house or something, and something could come up.
I know, right?
All right. That's it. That's the end of today's show. Once again, band is the Cloud Nothings. So with all that being said, I'd like to encourage everyone to drink local beer, listen to local music, and of course, support your local podcasters. Once again, these are the Cloud Nothings.